off. Go to Casper.com/promo. Joel Klatt, the voice of college football. He and Gus provide all sorts of excitement. We'll get to the Michigan thrashing of Ohio State, which was wow.
What a scene that was.
Woo! That was amazing. All right, let's start with this. Lincoln Riley to USC, and I heard some Sooner fans saying, hey, Lincoln Riley, his teams are a little soft. and I'm like, well, they always run the ball really well. They're not just a passing offense. It starts with the run game. So what do you make of him coming to SC? What will they look like, and how long will it take?
I think he's going to make them in his image. It'll look a lot like what OU looked like. I think that his biggest challenge is going to be finding the right combination on the offensive line as far as the immediate challenge, because his system is run-oriented, and they're more successful and have been more successful when they can run it efficiently. And that was part of their downfall, if you want to call it that, this year at Oklahoma, is that they didn't run it as dominantly as they have in the past.
Was one of their weaker O-lines.
It was. They hadn't quite developed it. It just wasn't. It was one of those years that you caught it perfectly, and they just weren't as dominant as what they have been over the last few. But that's what he's going to be trying to do at USC, and he'll be able to do that. This is so fascinating to me because it makes not just USC, but the West Coast relevant in college football.
Right.
It has been, and everyone, like the Pac-12 people, they are on eggshells all the time about just the overarching stature of their conference, you know, and they're just so anxiety-ridden about getting credit or being at the. Here's the bottom line. This conference has been somewhat irrelevant for the better part of a decade, outside of a couple of years where Marcus Mariota was great or Peterson made a run with Washington. Yeah. But outside of that, it has not been good. And this makes not only USC, but the entire footprint relevant. And I think that the dominoes that we see from this over the next couple of years are going to be substantial. If you look around college football right now, folks, you've got players and impactful ones all over the country that are from the Pac-12 footprint, not just Southern California, although a lot of them are from Southern California, but the footprint. Just think of just the top end. I mean, C.J. Stroud and Chris Olave at Ohio State. They also got the #1 wide receiver in the country out of the Seattle area in Emeka Ibuka last year. They got the #1 defensive end out of the country out of the Seattle area in JT Tuimoloau. That's just Ohio State. You've got Bryce Young at Alabama. You've got, Spencer Rattler was an Arizona kid. He was at Oklahoma. You've got Bijan Robinson, one of the best running backs. He was an Arizona guy. You've got DJ Uiagalelei. They're littering college football. If you were to talk with top-line coaches in 2007, 8, 9, you know what they would have said about, hey, are you going to go recruit that kid in L.A.? Why? It's not worth my time. There's a fence built around the L.A. area and the Southern California area because Pete's not letting that kid go.
That's right.
And Urban Meyer said I wouldn't even attempt to come in Southern California.
Ed Orgeron told me once they used to laugh when they would go to high school games and see Ohio State and Michigan out here. They would laugh. They're
right, because they had no chance.
No shot to get any of the best players.
So if they can do that, and that's an if, right? Because those programs are great programs, certainly, and have a lot of momentum going right now. But if they can do that, what they will quickly establish is a marquee top-end college football presence on the West Coast, which we haven't had for the better part of a decade. And I think that's important for the sport as a whole.
Yeah. All right, Brian Kelly to LSU. It's funny, I hear this. It's a weird fit. And I'm like, win 11 games, it's not weird.
Well,
he's going to win games.
He is going to win games.
Listen, he's a really good coach.
He's a great coach. I'll go in the great category. I think Brian Kelly is a great coach. Culturally, it's a completely different environment. Yeah. Notre Dame and LSU.
So is Oklahoma and L.A.
Oklahoma and L.A. Folks, does it really matter when someone puts $100 million in front of you if it's the best fit? I don't think it does. I think he was 100% honest with everybody in the room a while back when he said, listen, unless there's a fairy godmother and my wife and I have a conversation about some blank check, I'm going to be at Notre Dame. That wasn't a lie. And the fairy godmother happened to be wearing purple and yellow.
Yeah.
And folks, every one of us is for sale. You might not want to hear that, but it's true. Every single one of us that are listening are for sale in our careers. Colin, you were for sale. Joy, I'm for sale. That's just the nature of it. And guess what happens? There's two reasons why that's not going to happen for you or won't happen for you. You're either not valuable enough to leverage that for sale, or two, you have some contractual obligation that prevents you from going in that direction.
Yeah.
That's it. That's it. Or else everybody is for sale. So if you get that contract, you're moving too. So cast the first stone if you're the one that's not going to move, okay?
Yeah, when I go to Twitter and people rip people for moving, I'm like, oh, so you're not talented enough to get offers. Because Chris Rock,
that's one of the reasons.
As loyal as his options.
You're
That's
as loyal
a
as your
great
options.
Philosopher, Chris Rock.
Now,
man's as loyal as his options.
The other aspect of that, though, is the contractual piece. So let me just, for a moment, college football is broken. Lincoln Riley just admitted to me upstairs. I sat with him. You can check out the interview. I know he sat with you as well. And I asked him, I said, listen, is it discouraging that you have to make this decision within this structure, which then makes you out to be the bad guy for doing exactly what everybody else would do?
Yeah.
And yes, that's the problem. The structure of the sport is totally broken because, as I've argued on this show several times, we don't have an overarching entity that's looking out for the whole. So everybody acts in their own best interest in college football, period.
By the way, that was boxing in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and why the UFC emerged is that boxers were just about Don King cared about Don, Bob Arum cared about Bob, and that was the – but this is a day to celebrate college football.
No, but I am. I'm telling you that if this is not how you want it to happen, and I don't think even Brian Kelly doesn't want to do it this way. Lincoln Riley doesn't want to do it this way.
Yeah.
So all you have to do is create more of an NFL model where you have tampering periods and you have structure to the sport. Put guardrails on the schedule of the sport. There should be no early recruiting period where you're signing guys in the early December, because this is the product of that.
Yeah.
You fire guys in September and you've got to hire them before December.
Yeah.
That's why this went down the way it did. It's not Lincoln Riley's fault. No. It's not Brian Kelly's fault.
That's right. The early signing period, USC had to get a coach in 48 hours. I mean, that's the way it is. Oh, okay. So it's a really good year for candidates. By the way, Urban Meyer said today, and I know Urban well enough, I've been saying this for months. He's like, I'm not going back to college football. It ain't happening.
No.
I've done it twice. I'm out. I got my money. So Urban's not going back. Matt Rule, Kingsbury, we'll see. But let's talk Oklahoma and let's talk Notre Dame. I think Luke Fickell is an unbelievable candidate.
Yes.
I think Matt Campbell's an unbelievable candidate. I do worry that Marcus Freeman, your first job being Notre Dame.
That would be tough.
It's most first-time Notre Dame coaches have not worked. It's too much. It's a labyrinth of hurdles to jump over.
I could see Marcus Freeman being the interim coach for Notre Dame, and I could see he and Fickell switching in the offseason. And Marcus Freeman gets his first opportunity with Cincinnati because that job opened because Luke Fickell took the Notre Dame job.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I also think that for Oklahoma, I think that Matt Campbell fits well there, folks. I mean, he understands the Big 12, knows how to win in the Big 12. He knows how to develop.
That's what I
like Matt Campbell there a lot. Brent Venables is a guy that I think would be wildly popular, in particular with the former players at Oklahoma, having been the defensive coordinator there a while back. So I think Brent Venables is a great candidate for Oklahoma, or Matt Campbell. I think those are home runs, by the way, and I think that they can continue to move forward and be quality programs.
Okay, so, you never want to be recency bias, and you don't want to overreact. But when I watch Michigan just 1988 roll over Ohio State, I said to myself, it doesn't mean they're going to win every year. But what they've established is, for the first time in Harbaugh's reign, is an identity. They've always had great O-linemen. They've always had good backs. And I watched that game, and I'm like, I'm not saying you're going to duplicate that in Columbus. But that looked like Michigan football. Like we're going to have four NFL first-round O-linemen. We can get that now. We're going to have an NFL tight end, an NFL back. We may not have the corners that Alabama does. But can you stop our run?
Can you deal with us at the line of scrimmage?
In cold weather.
Oh, I mean, first of all, the scene was incredible. That was the best environment I've ever been at in any sport, any level. It was absolutely phenomenal. I thought that the crowd was great. The snow added to it, obviously, and they did exactly what they needed to do. Ohio State came into this game with a lot of confidence. There's no doubt about that. But they were banged up on defense, in particular at linebacker, and they had to play in the last quarter with basically a nickel defense on the field at all times. And guess what Josh Gaddis did from Michigan? He said, I see your structural deficiency. Nickel defense meaning you only have 2 linebackers and 5 DBs. And he said, I see your structural deficiencies. And on the last drive, they didn't throw a pass.
Nope.
This is a huge credit to Josh Gaddis, the offense coordinator, who is a Broyles Award finalist for the top assistant in college football, because he understood what was on the field and what was happening. And he said to himself, I don't even need to put the ball in harm's way. I can just go out there and run the football right down the field, and they were able to do that. That was a great identity, like you said. And what's so fascinating for me is that Jim Harbaugh, who had to chase a few things during this tenure at Michigan, he kind of chased defense. Okay, I got to get Don Brown to stop Ohio State, and then that didn't work. So he gets Mike McDonald. And then he chased Josh Gaddis to go to the spread offense, and then he had to marry it back to, you know what that was? Stanford beating USC in the Coliseum. That's what he went back to, like what made him great to begin with.
That's exactly what it was.
It was incredible. The physical domination at the line of scrimmage.
By the way, all these, it's funny about all this stuff. So y'all wanted Harbaugh gone. Y'all wanted Brian Kelly gone. Our phones have made us so impatient. I won't read the article. I just want the headline.
That's
and
right.
You've got to win today. All you Brian Kelly critics and Harbaugh critics, you must have a power outage in your hometown, because I didn't see a tweet this weekend. Can we give these coaches? Dabo Swinney took 4 years at Clemson. Chip Kelly won 8 games. Their football stadium's 45 minutes up the road. These fans are nuts.
And I think that's one